All right. This lesson is on solving multi-step equations. Our learning target is to just be able to solve multi-step equations. First, I'd like to just get us started today, get our brains working a little bit, and look at this picture and see what the weight of each animal is. See if you can figure that out. Okay, so last time we talked a little bit about solving equations, and we really focused on this last step, how to solve two-step equations. We really worked with using inverse operations and kind of working PEMDAS backwards. Today we're going to start to more focus on these first two, adding those two on, and then getting to the solve. So then the lesson after that will then add step 3. But today's focus is really on these first two, adding those two to the last step. Okay. Before we do that, I want to refresh our memories about what like terms are. So like terms are things that have the same variables raised to the same exponents. So for example, that might mean like 3x and 7x. Those have the same variable and they're raised to the same power. And actually in both of these it's raised to the first power on both of those, but we usually don't write that if it's power of 1. So, and we can combine those to give us 10x. So you could do the same thing with a variety of these. You also know maybe that negative 4 plus 12, these are like terms because they both don't have a variable. So they are called constants. And we put those, we know that we can put these together since you've been doing that most of your elementary career. And so negative 4 plus 12 would give us 8. We could also say something like 13x squared minus 5x squared. Now, these both have the same variable, and they're both raised to the same power, 2. So we can put these together. These are called like terms. And so this here would be equal to 8x squared. So that is a refresher of what like terms are. And so when you see on the slide where it says combining like terms, right there, we can only do that if they are raised to the same power and have the same variable. So I would not be able to put together like 7 and 2y because this one has a y in it and this one doesn't. So these are not like terms. Okay. All right. Hopefully that's a good refresher for you. All right. So how do we solve multi-step equations? I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. So step 1 says to distribute. We'll talk a little bit about that here coming up, but there is no distribution in this one. And so then we're going to jump down to the second step. It says to simplify each side by combining like terms. Well, on the left side, it's just 40. There's nothing to simplify. It's just by itself. So now we're really looking on this right side. Is there anything that looks the same that we can put together? And by looking the same, they have to be like terms. I mean, they have to both be constants or have variables that are raised to the same power. So if you look at those, you probably notice that 16 and that positive 6 are like terms, and we can put those together. And you want to look in front of each number to see if it's positive or negative, and that will help you kind of determine what to do. So we're going to put the 16 and the 6 together. So let's just copy the other stuff. So now 16, and then you can see the plus in front of that. So it's a positive 6. So we're going to say 16 plus 6. Well, that's 22. So these two numbers have now become 22. We put them together. And then what do I have left? I still have this plus 6x that was right here. Okay. Now 22 and 6x I can't put together. They're not like terms. Okay. So now I'm done with step 2. It says move all my variables to one side. Well, my x's are already on one side, so I'm good. So now I'm going to go down to step 4 and solve using inverse operations. So now this is a 2-step problem like you did on your assignment last time. So first thing, I want to work PEMDAS backwards. I got to get this rid of that 22. So I'm going to go, it's a positive 22. So we're going to subtract 22. Okay, these cancel out. I get 18 equals 6x. All right, so now I have 6 times x is equal to 18. I want to get rid of that multiplied by 6. So I'm going to do the opposite, and that's divide. Okay, so I'm going to go right here now. So 18 divided by 6 is 3. Bring my equal sign down there. And then the 6's cancel here, and I'm left with 1x. They cancel because that's 1x, or just x. So my answer here would be 3 equals x. All right. Let's try tackling this second one here. Okay, so once again, we want to identify what are my like terms. I don't have any distribution. Step 1 says distribute. I don't have anything to distribute. So step 2 says to simplify each side by combining like terms. So I notice that's by itself, and I don't see anything I can combine there. So then I want to look for like terms, and I notice that these are like terms. Okay, and you'll notice that second one, that 5y, I put the negative with it. That's because always the sign that's in front of it goes with it. Okay, and the 9y is positive because you don't see anything. It's the first term listed, so we don't usually write a plus in front of it. Okay, so 9y minus 5y is 4y. So those combine to become that. And then now I have plus 11 comes down and equals 39. You notice how I'm kind of keeping this lined up. The equal sign stays in the same spot. I've kind of got a space there, but that's okay. That's just so I can keep everything lined up. All right, so now move variables to one side is the next step. That's already been done for me, okay? So now we can move down to step 4, solve. So solve using inverse operations. Subtract 11 from both sides. I get 4y equals 28. Okay, and now 4 times y equals 28, so that's multiplication. So I'm going to do the opposite, divide. That becomes 1y, or y, equals 7. And that's my answer. There we go. All right. So there's our steps to solving multi-step equations, and a couple of these we haven't really had to deal with yet. So now let's introduce the first step a little bit. Let's talk about distributing. All right, what is the distributive property? The distributive property is one of the more powerful properties that we have in algebra. And it says if I've got this, what I can do is I can distribute the a to both of these and then add them together. So I could go a times b and then add that to a times c. So these two things mean the same thing. All right. So if we were using numbers, so this, and maybe variables instead, so that this makes maybe a little more sense, we would say 3 times x, that's 3x. Then we would say 3 times 7, which is positive 21, so we're going to write plus 21. So I can simplify this and write this. We're saying that the distributive property says those two things are equal. Okay, so that's a quick review on the distributive property. All right, so now, how does this work? All right. Let's zoom in a little bit on this. Multi-step equations. So again, here this step 1 says to distribute, and this time now, for the first time, we do have that that we can do. So we're going to distribute this -10, and here's where you want to be careful with your signs. You really want to watch those. So I'm going to write, and use your calculator if you need to. So you've got -10 times -8. You know a negative times a negative is a positive, and 10 times 8 is 80. Okay, and then now I'm going to take -10 times 4x. So -10 times 4x is going to give me a -40x. Okay, so now I'm done with that. Step 1, done. Step 2, I want to look for any combining that I have on either side. I notice 5/60 by itself. 80 and -4x are not like terms, so I can't combine them. So step 2 is done. Move my variables to one side. All my x's are already on one side. So now I'm on to step 4. All right, so I'm going to solve. This is a 2-step equation. I need to get rid of this 80. You'll notice it's a positive 80. I know that because in front of it I don't see a negative there, so I'm going to do the opposite and subtract 80 from both sides. Okay, so now this is 480 is equal to, that drops out. Now here you have to be careful. Don't forget to bring down that negative sign too, okay? So I've got -40x. A lot of people forget that, and then their answer is wrong. It's the wrong sign, okay? All right, so now -40 times x. Remember, this is a -40. Some people are saying, oh, I see a minus sign there, so I'm automatically going to add. You don't want to do that. You want to think about what operation this really means. So we don't want to do that. We want to say, oh, that's -40 times x, so I'm going to divide by -40 here, and then remember to do that also on the other side. Okay. All right, so now I know that that's 1x, or just x, and then here, if I divide these two, I get -12. And that's my answer. All right. So now we're getting into a little bit more of this basic steps to follow. We're starting to understand all the different parts of this now, hopefully. Okay. All right, so how do we work this and put this all together? So here is the last problem where it's all the different steps that we're going to see, other than moving variables, which we'll talk about next time. So let's try this problem. All right. So step 1, distribute. Okay, so I get -18x, and then 3 times 4 is +12. Now I'm just going to copy the rest. Okay, now I want to put together my like terms. So I actually will highlight these right here. These are my like terms. I'm going to put those together, and I get -25x. And then I can copy the rest. Okay, so that's where that came from, right? Okay, so now I've got all my variables on my one side, so now I'm down to the last step. So I can subtract 12 from both sides. I got -25x equals -250. And then again, this is multiplication. So I'm going to divide by -25 on both sides. And x is equal to 10. And there we go. Okay. All right. Once we've finished with this lesson, then you'll have an assignment on multi-step equations. You'll need your iPad, Notability, your MCA calculator or a different calculator in your notes. And when you're done, put it into Schoology. All right, I hope that makes sense. See you later.